Welcome back to Desk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Oliver Templeton, who is the sports manager at Oliver Charles Sports Management. Welcome, Oliver.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for having me.
And I thought we could talk a little bit about the younger Oliver and some of the career aspirations that you might have had when you were a younger student. I know you were always interested in sport and business, but when did you find your way into what you're doing right now?
I guess a good place to start is I'm originally from the UK, so from the United Kingdom. I'm now based in the United States, but I moved to the United States when I was 19. So the first 19 years of my life in the UK was very sport heavy. So I grew up playing a lot of football, soccer now here in the States, but grew up playing a lot of football. I played for Huddersfield Town. So I came through their academy, signed a 2-year youth team scholarship contract right out of high school. But growing up, I was always dipping between football, tennis, and I actually played squash as well, of all sports, which really kind of led me down the individual path in the squash tennis side of things. And then the football gave me that team environment as well. So grew up playing multiple sports, all at a relatively high level. It wasn't really until my 2-year contract at Huddersfield when I really started to see that professional goal was there and it was achievable. So left high school at 16, 17 and went into this 2-year full-time contract at Huddersfield, which was a great experience. We played in the Northern Academy League. So we were playing against teams like Manchester United, Liverpool, Manchester City, their academies. So growing up and playing against a lot of those players who are now in the English Premier League and playing across Europe was just a great experience, because now on the back end, working in sports management and managing these types of players, I've played at that level. I've played against some of the best players in the country, which really gave me a good gauge on where players are at in their development. So coming through the academy system, getting that full-time contract out of high school, putting essentially all my eggs in that football basket because the goal is there. It's there to be achieved over the course of that 2-year contract. But unfortunately for me, like so many of the professional sports players or players looking for that professional contract, I got injured in my first year, which knocked me out for about 12 months. Luckily for me, I had great support through the club. Had the operation on my knee, which then took another year to recover. But by that point, as you can imagine, at that level, there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of players behind you pushing for that spot. And after 2 years out of the game, that extension, that professional contract just wasn't there. But it gave me great insight into the game, and Huddersfield looked after me. They put me on the coaching staff. So I got a really good experience at a professional club, and seeing those players develop and then go on and make their professional debuts was just a great experience to be a part of. So I think the injury was what really kind of shook things up for me, because my focus had been on sport since the age of 4 or 5. I always thought that was going to be the route, but all that experience playing at a high level at different sports pretty much just kind of guided where my career is today, because that's where my enjoyment lies. That's where my passion is. And I just have a really good understanding about the sports environment and now the sports business world. So when I didn't get that extension on my contract in Huddersfield, and I didn't have really the academics to back it up. Once you've gone down in the UK, you're either going down the academic path or you're going down the sport path. By the time you get to university, yes, you've got the opportunity to kind of blend the two together. But in reality, if you're going to go or turn professional in your sport, then you will have naturally come through a club especially on the football side. So when I didn't get that extension on my contract and I didn't have academically really anything to fall back on, I was going to be starting fresh. That's when the opportunity was presented to me to come and play in the United States. So that's when I made that next step. But growing up, I think that team environment of playing at a professional club and playing with other high-level players and against, like I said, some of the best players in the world at the time at the academy level, and then went on to make those professional debuts and had great careers over the last 10 years as well. Combining that with some high-level individual sports really gave me a balanced approach as to what it takes to achieve that next step. Even though I didn't get that professional contract, I saw the standard of the player that were getting those contracts, which then gave me the confidence to know, okay, I think I can kind of manage and navigate this environment from a sports management perspective, because I've seen firsthand really what it takes to succeed in this industry.
I have to say, in hearing you describe that journey, on the one hand, it's very inspiring to see that you had supporters along the way that didn't let you just throw the towel in and give up. And I know that young people watching this right now might be thinking, yeah, but he probably didn't love sport as much as we did, because we would feel really gutted if that happened to us. And I think sometimes when we retell stories, we make them sound seamless, and they kind of come across as, it was okay. But talk to us about the depth of what that felt like, because I want a young person to understand what you're describing right now is you coming through the journey and seeing the other side of that journey and appreciating the learning and the skill that you had, which probably gave you the transferable skills to be a service of excellence right now in what you do. But talk to us about what it felt like, because we know that young people don't consider that their professional sport, the retirement, might come a lot earlier than they expect it to be. And I sometimes wonder if we don't talk enough about helping young people understand that at some point, every professional player will retire, and what can you be doing moving forward from there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head that when you are that age, I mean, I signed for Huddersfield at the age of 12, and I came through their academy system and didn't leave the club until I was turning 17. So I had a solid 5 years at a club where you're training on a daily basis. You've got games once to twice a week. You're growing up with your academy teammates, and I'm ball boying at the first team games on a weekend or on an evening, and you're truly a part of this club, and you see that next step and you see what's available to you in terms of, if you get this contract, then you could be playing in front of all these fans in your hometown, at the club that you've grown up in. So there is that element of really striving to achieve that professional contract. And when you are going through that, it's really a bit of a bubble, because there is pressure, regardless of whether it's external or it's just internal pressure that you're putting on yourself. That pressure exists because it is such a good opportunity. I think with hindsight, being able to look back on that time now, even though it wasn't the outcome that I was looking for, expecting, or hoping, it was probably one of the best things that actually happened to me in terms of the experience and the opportunity and the doors that opened then, because it just completely shifted my perspective on the sport world when I didn't get that extension. And I knew it was for reasons outside of my control, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I didn't get that contract, so I had to adapt. So that pressure is real when you're growing up, and you're almost in this incubator in a professional club where the club's goal is to develop players and make sure that those players move on into the first team and potentially beyond, depending on what club you're at. But at the same time, it's also the responsibility of the player and the parents and the family themselves to make sure, and this is something that I really put a lot of emphasis on now, making sure that there are alternative and other options, because regardless of how good you are, and trust me, I've seen some incredible youth players that didn't go on and make it professionally for one reason or another. When I was 13, 14 or 15 playing against some of these players at, say, Manchester United's academy or Newcastle United's academy or Sunderland's academy at the time, who've developed numerous professional Premier League players and England internationals, you see these players and you truly see what that level of, it is such a fine line between the making it and not making it. And the sports world is cutthroat. So you have to be prepared for alternative options. And now that comes with academics, with looking at work experience opportunities, making sure that you are working and spending time on other hobbies outside of maybe that core focus of one individual sport that you want to go and try and turn professional, make a career out of. But the reality is, it is an incredibly small percentage of player in any given sport that will go on and sign a professional contract, get paid to play the sport they love. The way in which I now view this, having the experience of playing at that level across multiple sports. I played National League tennis. I got asked to represent my country at squash. So I played at a high level across a number of different sports, eventually selecting football. But seeing that just across a variety of different sports that have different requirements and different mental capabilities, whether it's an individual or a team sport, the emphasis that I put on all of this now for similar players going through a similar scenario to me is saying that, look, yes, that professional contract is fantastic if you go and get that. But regardless, the tools that you have being a high level athlete can open so many more doors for you that you should be kind of spreading your bets a little. You should be looking at alternative options and alternative routes, because the reality is, like I said, it's a small percentage. Having that insurance policy of maybe a university degree or a college degree or some work experience on the side as you're pursuing that, your professional endeavors on the sports side, just ensures that you've got alternative routes to act upon. So growing up, I mean, it was tough. It was when I got injured and I'm on the verge of getting that extension on my contract and the rug's pulled from underneath you. It gives you a reality check at the age of, say, 17, 18 as to, well, what does my future look like now? Because I spent the last 10 years essentially trying to become a professional athlete, and that option is now no longer available. And that is a common story across the board. I would say that is not so much on the injury side. The injuries are common, but also just not making the cut. And there's thousands and thousands of kids across the globe that are all trying to make that next step in their sports. What I trying to develop into my players' plans now is ensuring that we take more of a holistic approach to their career, that sport being a part of that career. Ideally, if that turns into a professional contract, then fantastic. But we're planning for alternative options along the way, because the larger percentage of players that will go on and do something outside of that professional contract is the vast majority of people. So that's where I put a lot of my emphasis, just ensuring that the doors and the pathway and the connections are there in place for the player to go on and give that professional contract a shot. But fundamentally making sure that we're spread across the board, and we've got academics, we've got job opportunities, we've got internships, and we're working as hard as we possibly can and putting everything behind working towards that pro contract. So, like I said, with hindsight, it was one of the best things that happened to me in terms of the experience and opportunities that it generated. But at the time, it was probably one of the worst experiences of my life, being told that you're injured, you're going to be out for another 12 to 18 months. That contract that you've been working towards is not available. But then, like I said, after coming to the United States, which I know we can talk about as well, and what my niche is there, helping students and student athletes, football and sport in general opened those doors and created what was then going to be that next chapter in my life, which was university, American soccer, and what is now Oliver Charles Sports Management, my sports management company that helps similar players to myself and high caliber student athletes across a variety of sports who are looking to come to the United States, either on a sports scholarship or an academic scholarship, or they just want to come and play their sport at a high level in the US.
That's incredible. The journey that you've taken us through from being a player to being employed and then to being an entrepreneur. And I can see that common thread of that love for sport and you finding ways to stay in the industry and also to help young people as well. One of the most prominent questions that I hear often, either from educators or from young people, are what are some of the transferable skills that one can take from being a professional player to working in a different capacity? And I know that you mentioned this when you were telling us about your journey and saying that, even if you don't make the cut, even if you don't get the contract, there's so much value that you can bring in other roles because of sport. So what would your top 3 or top 5 be?
Yeah, great question. Playing at the level that I did, just going back to say my time at Huddersfield and playing against the players now who have had incredibly successful careers in that sport, and the players that I played with who had great experiences and careers as well. There was a defining factor with these players that there's always some element of how does your body hold up and injuries and things like that play a part. But for the most part, a lot of it is mental, and it's making sure that, one, you are working as hard as possible. So you're determined, you're punctual, you're turning up on time, you can be trusted to do the job and do the job to the best of your ability on a consistent basis. This isn't turn up 2 or 3 days a week. This is 7 days a week when you dedicate time to something that you are going at that 110% and working towards the best possible outcome. And looking back, when I think about those players that I was playing with or against and where they've gone now, they had that. I played against these players multiple times a season over the course of 5 years and played with the players who went on and had successful careers every single day for the best part of 7 or 8 years as well. And there wasn't really any luck involved when you get to that stage. You talk about injuries and things, but even those players who have that mental capacity to maintain that standard at such a young age as well is really that defining factor. And those traits then carried over into, let's say, a non-professional athletic environment, can still be in the sport industry, in the business industry, in the humanities, in music, whatever industry it may be that you go into. The successful people that I've come across or done business with or been introduced to all seem to carry those same characteristics. They're driven, they're motivated, they've found their passion, and they've taken the time to find their passion as well. They haven't just taken the first job that's available and then let that momentum get them to where they've got. They've actively sought out new challenges. They've got out of their comfort zones. They understand that if they want to get to that next level, what's going to separate themselves are all those traits that I just discussed, that professionalism, that next level mentality of how can I make something better and put 110% into it to ensure that it is better than the other product or service that you may be competing against. There's no, how can I say it? There's no easy route to the top. And I'm seeing that now, and I'm seeing that as my players develop and as my players get more and more opportunities and more doors open for them, that next level is always available. Then the next level, then the next level. You can be always chasing that. It's a case of figuring out what you enjoy doing, figuring out what you are good at doing, spending the appropriate time to get that as a major part of your career if you can. And maybe that will take a year. Maybe that will take 5 years. Maybe that will take 15 years. But over the course of your career, at least you are working towards something that will be your career for the next 10 or 15 years thereafter.
Wonderful.
So
Let's, sorry to cut you off.
no.
I want to go into what you're doing right now, and let's talk about your role. You recruit and you place students, international student athletes at American universities. What are some of the skills that you look for in these students? And are they only athletic skills, or are you expecting academic skills and academic excellence as well?
So when I moved to the United States in 2010, and I utilized my ability as a footballer to be able to get the appropriate scholarships, to make that financially affordable, to make sure it was feasible, and to give myself the options of a number of different colleges to go and compete at. So I came over in 2010 as an international student. I got my undergraduate degree. I got my first master's. I then got my MBA. And I did all of this. I captured all these education credentials, all these new skills from an academic perspective through the tools and through my ability as a sports person. So that's how football helped develop my career, regardless of the fact that I didn't get that professional contract, that extension at Huddersfield. The tools of football alone was what got me into America, and then took my academics to that next level, which then helped my career. When I'm dealing with players who are coming out of a similar scenario to what I did, which is kind of my niche, the players who are leaving these pro clubs or these semi-professional clubs, they don't get that extension on the contract and they're looking for alternative routes. America is becoming more and more of an option for international players, because the non-traditional American sports outside of American football, baseball, basketball are growing considerably, football being one of them, but other sports such as rugby, for example, is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. And these are sports that I'm familiar with and have experience in. So it made sense for me to collaborate and work directly with the colleges here in the United States. I'm based in Baltimore, Maryland, on the East Coast, and I simply work directly with the colleges. There's a variety of colleges at different levels, from different playing standard to different academic requirements. So there is a fit for the vast majority of players out here. It's not always where you start your career, it's where you end your career. So if you don't quite have the academics, if you're not quite an A-star student, the structure in the American college system is designed to kind of give everybody that opportunity to continue to progress from an academic perspective and from a sport perspective as well. And America ties the two together very well. They combine high-level sports with high-level facilities, high-level coaching, and strong and good budgets with high-level academics, and that schedule of blending the two together. So what's required to be able to succeed here in the States at the university level and then beyond, balancing a full-time football schedule with a full-time academic schedule, and being a university student at the same time and enjoying yourself and getting everything out of that university experience. The traits that those players have, or the traits that I look for in those players, are someone who, one, is passionate about taking their career to the next level, because you simply can't attack this and you can't succeed in the American college industry and beyond if you don't have the desire and the motivation to carry this on for what essentially is the best part of a 4-year university degree here. So going back to those traits and that professionalism, that punctuality, that dedication to your skill is really what I'm looking for in these students, because I will find a fit for the student academically and from a football perspective. But over the course of those 4 years, that student, and this comes from the coaches that I work with as well, there's a large number of players across the board that these coaches can select from, with high academics and high-level sporting backgrounds. Really, what separates them are those characteristics and how those players come off when the coach speaks with those players and the player's family, and making sure that we've spent the time, or the player has spent that time in advance preparing for, say, the introduction to the college. Maybe they've done the research on the degrees that are available at that college. They've looked at the location, they've looked at the facilities, they've looked at the team sheet and the schedule of games and the conference they play in, and they're prepared to have that interview or that call with a college who is potentially going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarship into this player. Being prepared for that and ensuring that you're not just putting it up to chance or luck, truly putting all your effort into making this a success is really what's important, what's necessary to be able to take that next level in the United States.
So much expectation on a young person at such a young age. I know that you say your top tips would be to get experience as early as possible, get out of your comfort zone and mix it up. I heard you saying that the challenge for a young person is to be able to find that sweet spot in the balancing of the professional sport and being a full-time student. What would you say as the founder right now of your organization and having to meet with so many young people and their families and having to weed out the students who might not be able to balance the two worlds, but might be really great at their sport? How do you go about doing that?
I think within the industry that I work in, I am somewhat confined to the rules and regulations of the schools and the visa requirements, for example. So the niche that I work in truly is a niche from an international perspective, that there are alternative routes for players regardless of their academic standings. But if you are coming over here to play sport, then the two do go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other. You've got to maintain your grades and you've got to perform, essentially. So there is that pressure. I get that. But the fact that the players who do make that step and they do dedicate the time and resources to making this happen, and they come over here and they hit the ground running, are the ones who are dedicated to both, and they see the fact that both elements, the athletic and the academic, are required to carry this on over the 4 years. So the players who maybe don't want to go down the academic route and they just want to go down the sport route, then I'm honest and I'm transparent with them, and I just say that maybe the American route isn't for you. So it has to be a blend. And now seeing the players who have come over and have spent those 4 years in the college system that I've managed every year, and we've put them and we've kept them on an academic plan to ensure that not only are they enjoying the sport, but they are getting a relevant degree in an area of study that they enjoy, and are then able to transfer those skills and everything they've learned, and transferring the sports skills and everything they've learned from the sport aspect into, say, work experience, into an internship or a job opportunity when they graduate. That's really where the success lies, because it compounds year after year. You're learning in the classroom, you're learning new traits and skills and techniques with a number of different cultures and different players on that team. You combine the two year after year and you become a more senior player in that team. You take on more responsibility in that team. All of these traits that we keep going back to are then what are then carried over into their career, which is the first step on that ladder that you're then climbing again. So it does sound like there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of expectations, but the reality is that nothing is given to you. You've got to go and work for it. And I find that as long as you find that passion, then that work becomes enjoyable, and work per se then just becomes a part of something that you would be doing as a hobby regardless. And that's the sweet spot. That's what you have to continue to work towards. And again, it might take 1 or 2 years and it might take 15 years, but along the way, that process and continuing to work on your craft and hone your craft, you get the enjoyment out of it. And that is what sustains you for over the course of however long it takes you to carve out a career in the area that you enjoy.
Definitely transferable skills that a young person can take into any career. I could keep asking you questions and keep talking to you, but I'm very conscious of our time. Oliver, if you could leave us with one golden nugget for a young person currently really serious about sport, studying sports science and business and thinking to the future, what would that be?
I would say try and understand your industry from a number of different angles. And what I mean by that is, as I was coming through that academy system, I had my blinders on. I was simply focused on getting that professional contract, when I think subconsciously I was getting all this experience of being a part of a professional club. But really, as I was coming through that, had someone told me, go out of your way, go and ask advice from those first team players, go and meet the backroom staff and understand how the operations behind the club worked, and how from either signing a player or doing a marketing piece or selling tickets or marketing of the club's brand. Understanding all of this just gives you more of a well-rounded perspective on the industry that you are in. For me, that was football, but for somebody else, it might be, like I said, it might be music, it might be art, it might be accounting or engineering. They might have a skill and a passion, and they might enjoy figuring out answers to problems, and that's where their enjoyment lies. Go after it, but don't just try and say, okay, this is the job that I want to go and get, and this is how you get there. Look outside the box, look at that industry from different angles. What are the players in that industry? Meaning, from my perspective, there's the players, there's the coaches, there's the managers, there's the agents, there's the colleges themselves and the admissions. I can't be successful unless I understand all of the processes involved in my industry. And that works across the board, whether you are an engineer, an accountant, a musician. You have to understand the entire environment that you're stepping into to be a cut above the rest. So I would say get out of your comfort zone and look at your industry from a different perspective and try and understand your industry from as many angles as possible.
Thank you, Oliver, for sharing all of those really incredible insights. And I appreciated how you merged in not only your passion for sport, but also the little strategies that you've taught us on how to discover and getting out of your comfort zone, and the perspectives that you are encouraging. Really important. Definitely not something that sports players will hear often, because it really is about, stay in the game and keep your mind in the game. But when we're looking at building one's career, it is very important to bring in multiple perspectives. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing these insights.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Maria.
And that brings us to the end of another incredible conversation. Today, we were speaking with Oliver Templeton, who is the CEO and founder of Oliver Charles Sports Management. Thank you for watching, and we will see you at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.